Industries. I am pleased and excited to welcome you all to today's knowledge session on the role of geospatial ESG in sustainable development. As you're aware, tomorrow, as every year on April 22nd, we celebrate Earth Day worldwide to demonstrate global support and raise awareness for protecting the Earth's natural resources. This Earth Day, AGI is taking the opportunity to draw the focus of our audiences to one of the major challenges faced by our planet today, the environmental crisis. For tackling and creating solutions for this environmental crisis, one of the major requirements is that we understand and measure environmental changes. While such quantification used to be a challenge earlier, there is growing optimism for providing a workable data solution with what is known as geospatial ESG. Today's webinar is about understanding the concept, how it is relevant for governments, businesses, and civic society, what innovations and approaches are boosting the landscape, and what the future of geospatial ESG looks like. With that, I would like to invite the President of the Association of Geospatial Industries, Mr. Pramod Kaushik, to deliver his welcome address and steer the discussions forward. Sir?
Good afternoon, everyone. A big warm welcome to this, I would say, important day, which we are celebrating as part of the Earth Day, which is tomorrow. And this seminar, we are Geospatial ESG webinar, what we are doing is very, very important, an important step towards the same. We all, as I would say, industry people and the association, especially AGI, is working towards making this earth is a better place to live in. We all have to be very responsible in towards the environment, and our responsibility is basically towards this earth, which is this Earth Days is actually happening. And I'm very pleased to see that, whatever Sakshi just talked about, that AGI, as part of this initiative, is hosting this 1.5 hour seminar on which we are talking about all these technologies which can be used to help our Mother Earth, and we have a duty to pay towards this. And we have experts from, I would say, World Bank, World, and the environmental experts who are here, as well as from the other agencies which are participating, who will be talking about all these topics in the geospatial, how we are trying to help the earth. And the theme basically is to give back this time. What are we giving back? And AGI has owner's responsibility as part of its members, as well as the entire community, that we would like to give back by giving the whatever best we can give in terms of the technology. How do we deploy these technologies to save the earth and to improve the environment? And the cutting edge technologies what go into making earth is a better place. And there are lots of technologies, and geospatial is there in every which way. We would like to find that what is happening in Bahamas there, and what is happening on the, I would say, the coral reef, what is happening in terms of the what is happening under the sea. There are multiple technology which can bathymetric sensors using, as well as the other technologies which are able to go so deep and find out what's happening beneath within the water, what is happening below the ground. You can see what from the from the air, and all these technologies, the sensors and geospatial data processing, which is also very important theme from government of India. Asia is aligned towards ensuring that our members are contributing to this saving the earth as well as the environment and acting very responsibly. And AGI carries a big responsibility, and we are urging all our members, and we are taking this forward to see that we deploy the technologies to really make a better place to live. Earth is a better place to live, and deploy these technologies all over the place. Some of the like in remote sensing technology, bathymetric sensors, some of the sensors from the air. These technology, when used properly, along with the AI, ML, some of the workflows which are being developed by the members of AGI, are really going to show the way that using the technology, how can we save the environment? How can we work for the betterment? And how we as citizens on the earth can live better? And that's the whole theme of this seminar. I welcome each one of you, and I sincerely appreciate your time joining this and going through the deliberations for next 1.5 hours, and all the very best. And I really hope that the some of the technologies and the themes and the topics being discussed by the experts on the panel are going to be very useful to us. There will be some good takeaways from this discussion, and we all becomes very responsible members of this earth who are contributing to save the earth and the environment and act very so responsibly. And with these words, I thank you very much, each one of you, for participating in this seminar. And over to you, Sakshi, so that we start the deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Like you said, we have with us an impressive lineup of environmental and geospatial experts today who will share their insights in today's panel discussion in a Q&A format. I also request all the meeting attendees, you are welcome to drop in your questions for our panelists in the chat box so that we can take them up towards the end of the session. With that, may I now request a quick round of introduction by our panelists, one by one, talking a little about their background and expertise. We have with us Ms. Neha Vyas from the World Bank. Ms. Vyas, if you could please introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. Good afternoon, Sakshi. Good afternoon, Mr. Pramod, and all the participants of this event. I'm Neha Vyas. I'm Senior Environment Specialist working with the Environment, Natural Resources, and Blue Economy team. Ours is a global practice, and we support operations not just in South Asia and Africa, but we are also engaged in several global products across the world. Our primary support is to the governments that we fund. So I work with IBRD branch, which deals with government clients, and we help take forward new applications, new techniques to monitor and look at all kinds of development challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vyas. Next, we have with us Mr. Arindran Gopala from the World Wildlife Fund. Mr. Gopala, if you could please share a few lines about yourself. Sir, you're on mute.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Sakshi and Mr. Pramod, for giving me this opportunity. Well, I've been with this field of conservation. I am a wildlife conservationist with the interest in technology, mainly remote sensing and GIS for the last almost 28 years. I've been using this tool to understand what's happening in the nature, especially with the ecosystem level of, let's say, the carbon sequestration, to understand the animal corridors, wildlife corridors, what's the impact and how the forest is getting depleted, or there's a change in the forest cover, and especially in the safeguarding the environmental, understanding the spatial scale and temporal scale, what's happening to the environment. I head the GIS remote sensing lab of WLF India, and presently we are working on various subjects, including right from impact of fire in the various forest ecosystems, to understand what's happening with the wetland and how much of carbon sequestration is various protected areas or like outside protected areas, and various other mapping exercises across India. Since India, it's an international organization, WF, as everybody knows, and our presence in the pan India, we work with various forest department of across India, along with supporting them, as well as also addressing the issues which is rising, especially in the conservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gopala. Next, we have with us Mr. Vinay Babu Adimulam from AGI member company Hexagon India. Mr. Vinay, please share a few words.
Very good afternoon, Sakshi. Good afternoon, Pramod sir, and good afternoon to all the panelists. My name is Vinay Babu. I'm the National Head for Business Development and Strategic Accounts. I have been involved in geospatial industry for nearly almost 25 years now. And I am part of some of the GIS initiatives as part of Hexagon, and looking forward to interacting with you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Joining us in this panel today is also Mr. Parikshit Das from AGI startup member Emitech Infosystems. Parikshit, please share a few lines about yourself.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, Sakshi. Good afternoon, Pramod sir, and all the panelists. I'm Parikshit, Director Sales from Emitech Infosystems Private Limited. I'm working in this geospatial industry from around across 13 years, and I'm working with all the forest departments in Eastern India and Northeastern India. And I have an expertise on geospatial technologies and inter data collection and everything. And we are growing with the geospatial technologies for the betterment of the environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Parikshit, and thank you to all our panelists. On behalf of AGI and on behalf of all our attendees today, I would like to reiterate my warm welcome to you all. With that, let us kickstart today's discussions with my first question to Ms. Neha Vyas from World Bank. Setting the tone of today's webinar and also giving our audiences a deeper understanding of the subject, we would like to know from you, what is ESG and why is it here to stay?
Sure, Shakshi. So I think everyone in this audience today very well understands the ESG, but let me take a step back. The use of this term actually started with the United Nations Environmental Programme Initiative in one of the reports, which was called the Freshfield Reports in October 2005. But all of this terminology that we are using today and the way we apply this concept, even though it may be sounding relatively new, actually started in its different formats and different ways right from 60s and 70s. Ever since we started looking at corporate social responsibility, we started looking at environmental related concerns. The terms and usage of this was different, but ever since it was brought up by UNEP in October 2005, this has become a mainstay. And what it has done is that it has these environment, social, and governance have become the three very, very important pillars of the sustainability framework. And they represent the topics that organizations and companies are expected to report in the current formats of corporate governance and corporate environment sustainability and social sustainability that we talk about. In essence, what it does is that all of these three areas capture the non-financial risks as well as the opportunities. We sometimes do not fully appreciate, it's not just about risk management, but also how you can enhance and increase the opportunities in terms of business, in terms of sustainability and doing overall good, which are inherent in way a company or organization works on a day-to-day basis. In essence, we have to understand that, this concept, ever since it has launched, has started changing the markets. It has started driving regulation and has propelled, increasing focus on transparency and reporting requirements when it comes to the word sustainability. It has basically started reshaping the entire concept around how investment landscapes are managed. And why? I think you laid it out very well in the beginning of the session, that the environmental problems and the cascading risk of climate change that we are into have pushed this planet into a state of emergency. And unless we start acting upon this sustainability imperative and start using this narrative, we will not be able to transform the way, human future or the planet's future is all about. So what has happened over a period of time is, in addition to the doing good to must do, that shift that has been brought into the way this framework is being used, it's no longer a differentiator. Sustainability ethos no longer is, something that people will make them look good, but it's a standard input that are required from all top and all high level. And in fact, it is now also cascading down to mid and small level players also, on how the investment decision making processes are used, and also more importantly how that investment finally leads into what they do on a day-to-day basis. So it's basically moving from fringes of investment philosophies to a mainstream acceptance by global investors. And it's very heartening to see that it has moved beyond just a simple greenwashing phenomena to making sure that there is more compliance. It attracts investment, brings in competitive advantage, can access and bring in the required talent and hold that human resources, and more importantly, cost reduction, which is what most companies want. So no matter how much philosophy we talk about on the planetary protection side of it, ultimately businesses, if it doesn't make sense for them in terms of cost reduction and profits, obviously this will not hold good. And what has happened is that studies have shown that wherever ESG proposition has been brought in, there is a higher value creation, both for the company, for the proponents, for the investors, and everyone else involved. In short, it is no longer something that is being seen as a bottleneck, but during a survey, 57% of the CEOs in India agreed that their digital and ESG strategic investments are completely interlinked with the way the company grows and the way its reputation is perceived. And we'll see that more of it is happening, and these processes and systems will get more and more refined and strengthened in the years to come. And that's why I feel that ESG is here to stay. It will keep getting refined, but it's not going anywhere, because people are asking markets and market players and asking the regulators to change the way traditionally businesses have been done. Back to you, Shakshi.
Thank you, Ms. Vas. This was really an insightful beginning of why ESG frameworks are such fundamental to businesses in India today and how they are so relevant for various stakeholders. Now, while ESG efforts, as you mentioned, that the concept has been around for some time, uh, but it has truly come to the fore in terms of how we look at it in the present day, in over the last 2 decades or so. But geospatial ESG as a concept, I think it's relatively new to the data mix. So could you tell us more about this data approach and why it is gaining ground?
Sure. This is relatively so ESG, as I was mentioning, depending on which part of the world you are sitting in. And let me come back to India. Especially in the last 4 to 5 years, the landscape is changing because of the way the regulatory changes have been brought about. There is more demand, more number of companies. Suddenly, there has been a 4 times jump in the number of organizations that are expected to be reporting. Now, in this larger landscape on ESG, where does geospatial ESG fit in? And you rightly said that it is relatively new. And what it is meant to be doing is using data, analytics, predictions, and all such depictions which can generate ESG relevant insights. For a specific, it could be a commercial asset, it could be a company, a portfolio, a geographical area, depending on how you want to look at it. But all these depictions, which are location based or tied or portrayed to a particular geography and can be referenced in time, is what geospatial ESG is all about. Now, what it will help us doing more accurately is who's doing, where they are doing, what they are doing, and putting it in a more demonstrable way, and making sure that, all this hogwash and greenwashing that was happening, that I have an intent to be good to, for environmental causes, or that I want to have a good policy on environment, but not actually walk the talk. These things are going to get eroded away as geospatial ESG comes into effect. Because what it will do is it will put in a potential cadence, an independent one, uh, with very, very specific variables on geography and on a time scale. And it can completely change the way environmental indicators and environmental performance has been monitored so far. So it will start changing. It is gaining ground, and the debate is shifting from whether we should be doing and talking about ESG to how to do, and the how to part actually would entail how the geospatial ESG gets used. So as and when these new disclosure regimes get more tightened up, regulatory pressures increase, and there is more demand and accountability to increase the authenticity of what we are writing in our reports, this is going to come to the fore, because results and outcomes are no longer tied to generic statements, overarching big statements, without having clear, precise, and complete disclosure on the indices or the matrices that one is supposed to be reporting to. So in short, it has a huge potential to change the game. And from greenwashing to actual demonstration, this is a way to go. And as demands from investors, regulators, customers, clients, is increases, this concept will act like a catalyst and will make sure that there is important information put into open public domain, more accountability is brought into the system, and we'll find that there is increasing number of takers with this retooling of investment decision regime, which can fall back on a very credible tool like geospatial ESG.
Thank you, Ms. Vyas. So from your talk, I think we can conclude that ESG has indeed propelled the focus on transparency and the sustainability focused investment landscape. And geospatial ESG in particular is driving location based depictions and insights for more authentic and demonstrable insights. With that, I move on to our next panelist, Mr. Arindran Gopala from the World Wildlife Fund. Sir, investors all over the world are now shifting their focus to sustainable businesses using ESG screening from asset to corporate level. How are geospatial ESG derived data products changing this landscape? Please share your views.
Yeah. So the ESG, the term which has been coined by the. I have some issues with my camera. I don't know why, but yeah. You'll be able to hear my voice.
Yes, your voice is clear.
Yeah. So the term coined by the business and finance institution to consider, the environmental, social, and governance impacts of the investment. Here they have to quantify the impact and different data sources that have been used, like web scrap media, financial modeling, and they are reporting annual ESG reporting of company themselves. So these data sets, especially the geospatial data sets, are used to compute the E, the S, and G scores for a company. So the geospatial ESG is one more potential form of data source to add into their mix. So it uses the ESG, the geospatial ESG actually uses data like high resolution satellite images, census data, field data sets, and they are corroborated and to get a general insights into their specific commercial asset or a company's portfolio, and their geographic area. So it's I would say that geospatial ESG is capable of providing independent global high frequency insights into the environmental impact and risk of single assets or companies within a given area or such state or country. Yeah. So, hello. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. I would also like to know from you, other than businesses, what other stakeholders stand to benefit from geospatial ESG datasets? If you could share some examples with us.
Yeah, you can see like recently, large business houses have integrated various environmental geospatial data points into their ESG products. Also, financial institutes have started to expand their technical capabilities and have incorporated in-house geospatial teams. Commercial institutions like Bloomberg, Ripris, Verix, and Maplecroft already offer geospatial ESG data products. One more live examples I would like to give. I know many of the companies have started, like mining companies have started using this technology to understand what is their impact. Let's say a mining industry would like to, and if they are going for a green plantations or restoration, let's say restoration point of view, they have to reforest, they are trying to reforest their areas. They're using this technology to understand which is this area where they can do a replantation and look into the what sort of species that can come out based on the various modelings, spatial modeling, which native species are, which suitable areas where they can plant. So that sort of analysis they are able to do to come out, especially, let's say, an example with we have been working, some of my known friends who are working with a mining company are using this technology, especially addressing those issues of plantations or green belt generations. So the technology has been, the data sets, the geospatial technology has been very much adopted by the stakeholders and in the business office.
Thank you, Mr. Gopala. I think This was a really insightful view for our audiences, many of whom come from the diverse sectors and organizations that you mentioned just now. So now that we have discussed the fundamentals of the geospatial ESG concept, and you've also shared about some sectoral applications, for example, mining. So now we move on to the geospatial industry's views and approach to this concept of geospatial ESG. My first question is to Mr. Vinay Babu from Hexagon India. Continuing this conversation, geospatial ESG can deliver useful insights into sectors like mining. So, if you could please highlight some more benefits of using the geospatial approach for studying assets and supply chains, specifically in the mining sector, keeping the ESG aspects in mind.
Thank you, Sakshi. It's a very good question, lovely question. And I would, as a technology solution provider, I would like to answer this question. As you know, we at Hexagon are a long being a leader in delivering smart digital reality solutions. This typically requires real-time autonomous data capture, analysis, and visualization. So by leveraging some of our broad product portfolios and competencies, we generate sustainable value in almost all industries and regions in the world. Like Neha told earlier, the data capture, data production to make sure that the business are actually getting into sustainable growth. That's very, very important, and we want to see that the value chain is clearly looked into. Coming to our mining, the question on mining, in my opinion, I would like to categorize mining life cycle into 4 pillars. The first one being the exploration. Second one is development. Third one is mining, and finally the closure of the mine. So if we talk about exploration, remote sensing technology has been used widely within the country to identify the sites. Once the sites have been identified using the remote sensing technology, the scientists go onto the site, do a borehole digging, identify the different minerals that are possible that was identified earlier. They wanted to actually check, they do the lab checks and all. So they're all geospatially tagged. So we know that the locations of each and every boreholes that have been done. Based on the lab study and the output that is generated out of these boreholes, there is a geological map that is produced. So that is the first initial stage of exploring where this particular mineral is. Like it could be coal, it could be gold, it could be different minerals. Once the exploration is done, then comes the next phase of the next pillar, what I was talking about, the development phase. Right? That's where the different concessionaries come into place and they start to mine the area. So before doing that, we have to, the department or the government has to identify the right concessionary. So there is a mining tenement system. You need to give it as a tenancy to a concessionary so that he can start to do the mining. So based on his credibility and different other processes that he is capable of doing the mining and all, there are environmental clearances and forest clearances, right? So obviously the area, the clearances, the mine plan that he wants to, the plan that he wants to do, all of that will be placed over the geospatial maps, and then they identify, okay, this is the thing that, this is the plan. And then based on those plans, the clearances are given to the concessionaire. Here, there is a very important aspect, the land records. Right? Who is owning the land there? Owner of it, titlings. Very, very important aspect that is, that's what is geospatial plays a very important role in it. And based on, after all of this, then the concessionary, once he's allotted the site, he does the mine planning, he does the modeling. Then based on his mine plan, whether he's being within the geographical area or the lease boundary that he is being provided, or he is going beyond. So there is change detection using of remote sensing again to see how the change detection is actually happening. Of lately, the volume computation that that has been excavated from the mine is also being used using our geospatial tools like the electronic total stations, the drones. Right? These are some of the tools that have been helping the mining industry to do the volume computation. Once the open cast mine, when the pit is formed, there's a rainfall, and then the water gets into the pit. So now geospatial technologies are helping out to see that, okay, how do we push this water back to the either to the nearest villages, or it could be used for suppression of dust that goes up in the air. So those are some of the tools that are also being used. Fleet management, that is the equipment, the assets that are actually moving in the mine area, making sure that the machine guided operations are taken care, the operator assistance. These are some of the tools that are helping the mine safety of the mining. Then, as Mr. Arindran has told, the closure of the mine, the afforestation or the plant monitoring, plantation, it's just not placing a plant, right? You want to make sure that the plant is growing. You want to monitor it. So now using the drone technology, or you either through the cameras, all the geotag locations of the plants are being monitored on a regular basis to see how the growth is actually. So to actually see that the plantation is moving. So these are the ways how the geospatial technologies are really helping in the mining life cycle.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vinay Babu. Indeed, with mining being one of the core industries for the Indian economy and employing more than 500,000 people, it is really impactful to see that geospatial technologies are helping across the entire life cycle and across applications in the sector. Moving on to another sectoral focus, I would also like to understand from you how businesses and investors in the power sector stand to gain from using the geospatial approach to ESG.
Again, a very nice question. Energy is now a very the next economy. What I would say, that thanks to the EVs, electronic vehicles, and things that are coming up. So here again, I would divide the power sector into three categories. I'm sorry, I always like to categorize the things, so that's why I usually categorize it. So the first category, I would put it as development. That's where the energy has to be developed. Then it needs to be distributed to the right audience, and also to make sure that the use of the energy is properly done. So here for the development, identification of site suitability, whether it could be for solar power plants, right, which is the best place to do, or to identify the wind power generation. So what are the right places to do the site suitability analysis is done. And for the existing sites, the asset management or the asset mapping, what is there? What are their maintenance activities that needs to be carried out geospatially in XYZ is now being carried out. Once the generation of these the power happens, it needs to be transmitted to the distributors, to the distribution companies. So the transmission also has multiple assets. It could be the substation. So the substation diagrams where the lines are actually moving. Now, under the transmission lines, you will have trees coming up. You want to make sure that using drones, we are now identifying whether the tree heights have come to very close to the lines. We want to make sure that the cutting is done in a scheduled manner. Right? It's not like every 6 months we want to do, but we want to make sure that when and only where that is happening. Very interesting. Another topic it comes into my mind is using photogrammetry and simulation. We are trying to do wind repowering. So based on the terrain, based on how the wind directions have changed, we are using simulations from within Hexagon to see, okay, now if I want to have a new plant, so which is the best place to do. That's from the development perspective or the energy creation perspective what I have. With regards to distribution, again, asset mapping, the customer indexing, right? The famous projects like APDRP and all that, or the RIPDRP projects, where the asset capturing, updations, right? All of that is a very crucial aspect in geospatial. So based on which we know that, okay, what is my load that is going to happen and all that. So we have deployed in some of the companies where the distribution companies have now started using geospatial in a very effective way. The last pillar or the category what I have is the use of this power. So spatial dashboards analysis are now helping us to know that, okay, where the actual load is, what is the demand versus what is the consumption that has to be there, whether are we producing that much. There are some things like, if at all, you would have heard about now the solar rooftops. Now you can have the solar panels on your roof and all that. So the best site suitability, whether these things can be done, and then how the power consumptions can be clustered. And if there is a new company that has that business that wants to set up, they need to have a new connection, which is the nearest substation, whether it can take that load, right? What happens if there is an outage, right? How do we manage all of this? So this is all getting connected, and now we are trying to make sure that all of this gets into maintenance, or a quicker or a sustainable value to the customer. So that is the different ways how the different investors and businesses can actually start to use geospatial to see how this can actually take it forward.
Thank you, sir. I think this was very relevant because the sectors that I asked you about, you've broken them down into, and defined how the geospatial approach can actually benefit sectoral applications in these sectors. Um, Moving on to our next panelist, Mr. Parikshit Das from Emitech Infosystems. Parikshit, I would like to understand from you, focusing more on the E in ESG. How are geospatial technologies and data sets helping us understand and communicate environmental impacts for decision makers? Please.
Right. So, good question, Sakshi. An ongoing challenge with environmental, social, and governance, that is ESG, efforts is access to robust data. In response, commercial data providers are continuously developing solutions to improve insights. Here, I will discuss one of these potential improvements: the use of geospatial data within ESG, focusing on environmental E aspect. Geospatial technologies and datasets have become increasingly important tool for understanding and communicating environmental impact to decision makers in recent years. They enable stakeholders to better visualize and analyze environmental data, providing a more comprehensive and accurate understanding of scope and scale of environmental issues. Geospatial technologies such as GIS, Geographical Information System, can be used to integrate and analyze a wide range of environmental data, such as air quality, water quality, land use, land cover, and biodiversity. These can provide decision makers with a more complete picture of environmental impact to help to identify areas where the action is needed to be taken. Geospatial datasets can also be used to track and monitor environmental changes over time, which is very important and crucial for understanding the long-term impact of human activities on the environment. For example, satellite imagery can be used to monitor deforestation rate or the change of sea level, which can help inform policies to address these issues. Like if I can take an example of North Bengal, most of the North Bengal areas are covered with green luscious forest areas. And if we want to do urbanization and if we do deforestation, then it will create a negative impact on environment. These things, we can analyze those and monitor those things by using geospatial technologies. In addition, geospatial technology can be used to communicate environmental impact to decision makers and public in more accessible and understandable way. For instance, interactive maps can be used to show the extent of pollution or natural disasters in a specific areas, enabling stakeholders to quickly understand the scope of the problem and take necessary action for the same. Overall, geospatial technologies and dataset are playing an increasingly important role in helping decision makers understand and communicate environmental impact with the essential for creating the effective of ESG policies and initiatives.
Thank you, Parikshit. I think, yes, we can all agree that the geospatial industry in India today is working very closely with various tiers of government, helping them advance their understanding and working with environmental impacts and metrics. But one of the more challenging areas to measure and report is biodiversity. What kind of headway is the geospatial approach making there?
Geospatial technologies has proven to be a valuable tool in measuring and reporting biodiversity. Geospatial approaches, geospatial approach uses the collected the data from remote sensing, satellites, and other sources like drone and aerial photography to map, monitor change in biodiversity in different scales. One of the key advantage of geospatial approach is that it allows researchers to collect data on biodiversity over large areas, which could be difficult because it's a time consuming to do it manually. So geospatial play a very key role to analyzing that and create the report on the same. Geospatial technology can be used to map habitat types, land cover, and other environmental factors that influence biodiversity. Another most important application on geospatial technology in measuring biodiversity is the use of SDM, that is species distribution modeling. SDMs use data on environmental factors that are associated with presence or absence of a species to predict its distribution across the landscape. This information can be used to identify areas of high biodiversity and prioritize conservation efforts. In addition, geospatial technology can also be used to track changes in biodiversity over time. For example, satellite imagery can be used to monitor changes in land cover, such as deforestation or urbanization, the example which I took earlier as well, which can have a significant impact on biodiversity. Overall, geospatial technology has made significant headway in measuring and reporting biodiversity, and it continues to be an important tool for conservation and management effort. However, it is important to note that the accuracy and usefulness of geospatial data depends on the quality and resolution of the data used as well as the expertise of those by analyzing it. That's right.
Thank you, Parikshit. So I think from our discussions with the technical experts, we can conclude that there are plenty of benefits to using the geospatial ESG approach, and geospatial technologies are making their headway in several key sectors for the Indian economy. Now, circling back to our environmental experts, Ms. Vyas, my next question is to you. Uh, so even while there are so many benefits that we have discussed about geospatial ESG, why is it then that this approach is not yet mainstream? What are your views on this?
Sure, Shakshi. I think that's an important question to look back. It's always good to celebrate, and we know that lot has changed over the last 1 decade, and we also know the potential that these technologies hold for us. But if we do not, take a bit of backstopping and look at what is holding it back for becoming a mainstream approach, I think this discussion will be incomplete because we will ultimately not be able to make the difference. So why is it taking time? First of all, as I was mentioning earlier, that this is an evolving area. The applications and the way we use this in different sectors over different periods of time has been changing. So it's not something that is, which has stabilized. The environment and the applications are changing. So overall, from where I sit, I know that private sector and certain corporates and agencies are doing their own bit and they understand what needs to be done. But a large part of our sector, which is government related clients, there is still a huge gap in the understanding and knowledge of how, where, and when these geospatial ESG formats can be used. Even if there is an understanding, many of these organizations have not been able to deploy the resources, or the consultants that they depend on for developing their systems and monitoring and developing their DPRs often are not well versed or do not have the expertise or the willingness to apply it. So that's one big part of the problem. Uh, and that needs to be tackled. And one of the ways in which this can be done is to, promoting more and more events, which you have been doing, your annual events, exhibitions, flyers, technical seminars, discussions on what was done in a particular case in a particular sector. This will all help in, shifting the game. The other big important part which we need to look at as technology providers or users of this is how we can bring in integrated solutions. So it's not just about capturing things over a period of time in a more nicely visualized manner, but how artificial intelligence, some of the modeling related requirements can be integrated and brought together as a solution, a complete package, a holistic package for our users. And I think there is a bit of work that we need to do, and that's also fast evolving, but that's one of the reasons why we are saying that the uptake is still not as much as it could have been. The other thing is that the value proposition and demonstrations, like these discussions, I think are very examples that we heard today, are very insightful. The more people hear it and the more they are able to appreciate the value proposition of this, there will be a change. The other thing is, there are also issues on commercial aspects, on immaturity of the data marketplace, the supply chain. There are multiple market related bottlenecks also, which we will have to work on. It's changing. There is realization, but that's primarily the reason why things have not been, as mainstreamed as we would have loved to see. Just taking a minute more to allude to what the previous speakers were talking about, there is a possible way of making the shift, and that is through making sure that these pilots or these examples, and how is it contributing to the value proposition. And I'm not just talking about the environment part of the story, but the economic, the decision making, the cost saving that has emanated because of application and use of such tools. And there are many. I think one of the previous speakers talked about the APDRP, the Andhra Pradesh Disaster Recovery Project, which was funded by the bank. The electrical utility company completely has been able to transform the way it used to traditionally do business 5 years back. We have been using these technologies for monitoring mangroves. There have hardly been any physical inspections other than the people who need to be there to do the work. Lot of high level monitoring, which is very time and cost efficient, is happening by deployment of techniques like monitoring through drones or monitoring through a satellite imagery, or comparing the changes that have happened over time on water supply, on similarly on environmental impact assessments that are being done. We had a lot of fictitious data, incomplete data, inaccurate data that used to get dumped into impact assessments. But the scene is changing. There are impact assessments that you can do by using these tools, which will be far more accurate, reliable, and the clients can rely back on that. On solid waste landfill sites, on shelter belts, on screening and site suitability. Again, I think there were some excellent examples that were shared. These are all things which will have to be propagated and pushed, and the government and the government agencies, which are the main players, which even influence the consultants and the corporate agencies at the end of the day, will have to be made aware of, to see that there is a mainstreaming that happens in this area. Back to you, Shakshi.
Thank you, Ms. Vyas. I think these were some wonderful insights that you've shared about the issues and bottlenecks that you've put to the fore about some great examples that should be talked about more and that can give more learning, more awareness, and also about the way forward, what needs to be done to make geospatial ESG a mainstream approach. Um, Now, coming back to Mr. Arindran Gopala, I think this has been a great session with some power-packed insights and examples from our panelists. I now request you to, share a brief summary of the session and your views on the future of geospatial ESG.
Yeah, so like as emphasis has now been placed on understanding the impact of business and financial sectors on the natural world, it is expected that we should see more investment in and use of these geospatial ESGs in the coming futures. Though some critical challenges needs to overcome, like access of sharing and data related to assets, as Ms. Vyas was mentioning, there's still a gap of these data sets issues in this environment, and data sets gap between supply chain and observation data, and the collaborations, let's say, between the scientific body as well as the industrial research body has to be, also needs to be emphasized in the future. And also the technology has developed in such a the level that where I remember like 10, 20 years back, the resolution of the satellite images where we were able to use, let's say, a 30-meter or 23-meter resolution, we were able to assess a forest cover loss or a corridor, let's say, wildlife point of view, a corridor, extensions of corridors where the loss is happening. Now we have a high resolution image of like 100 centimeters, 118 centimeters, where I can actually pinpoint exactly what is happening in these areas, where are the conservation effort has to be made, where the like could be, we can use drone, we can use satellite images, we can use and collecting the data. I'm talking about both research point of view as well as industrial point of view. Use this data, use artificial intelligence and machine learning, come out with interactive dashboards where these issues can be resolved. So the improving it can help in the help both financial sector for their better understanding, especially where the impact on the natural loss, and also the earlier challenges of long complex process of data creation to real world application has now shortened up because of advancement of these technologies. So future I see is that I see the congregation of, I would say, both technology, knowledge gap, data gap, all can be achieved, and wholesome holistic approach can be done, especially in the using the geospatial ESG in resolving many issues. Also, skill sets, which is I need to like to mention here, is that there is also though there are a lot of academics which are producing students in this field, but industrial requirement when it comes to the actual implementation on the field, the training on the skill set is still lacking. So that also has to be, that also I see as a future which is going to improvise, which is going to help us in building up this entire problem, resolving this problem in a better way. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Arindran. I think, yes, we can all agree the future of geospatial ESG and its mainstreaming, somewhere or the other, it also depends a lot on building the right skill and building capacity to, innovate in this sector. And you also mentioned briefly about the integration of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I can see a question in the chat box regarding this, how geospatial AI can unlock various ESG initiatives. So if any of our panelists would like to elaborate a little on this question for our audiences.
Hello, Sakshi. This is Vinay here.
Yes, yes, sir.
Is it okay? Should I pick up the question or?
Sure, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so the artificial intelligence is again a four-step process, right? It is actually starts from the it's actually the first step actually starts from the description. That is what is now what we have to do. Then next step goes to diagnosis, third predictive, and fourth one is prescriptive. So what is the task that we want to do? What are the different technologies that we have? How the artificial learning tools that have been developed, the machine learning tools, the deep learning tools that have been used, and how that can be brought into an application. So we need to consider all of these into consideration to actually to bring that. No doubt, artificial intelligence have now reduced the amount of time that is needed for an operator to actually build things. So, for example, like in the sector of defense, we are using it to identify some of the targets. Like it could be the aircraft, it could be a tank which is covered under a canopy. That's one. AI tools have been now being used for uh, even in the for classification of the crop types in agriculture sectors. There are many applications that the AI is actually being pushed, and it is pushing geospatial technology to the next level. And we have our own competitive lab in within the country where we are trying to bring this and bridge this gap to see how AI and ML tool can increase the productivity and increase the good outputs.
Thank you, Mr. Vinay Babu. I can also see some more questions in the chat box. One of which is, are there any open source software and tools that can be used for ESG? This is one of the questions. Any of our environmental experts would like to elaborate on this?
There are many open source. I'm sure Mr. Babu also can answer this. Many open source softwares are available. I've been using both proprietary software and open source, but I see a limitation in the open source software. Reason behind that is that it has the bulk data cannot be used. If you are stuck in certain process of your analysis, then you have to wait for the developers to answer those questions. But in a proprietary software, let's say, I don't want to take names, but I've been using various software which even Hexagon is like, let's say, image processing and ERDAS software and ArcGIS software, where we have a built-in ready-made algorithm which is available, which resolves the issues faster. So I would always say that, of course, if you are using open source, there is a limitations. You can still use it for certain purpose, but when you are running a large model sets, or when you're going to combine a lot of data sets to come out with a solution, I would always prefer a proprietary software. So that's my answer.
Thank you.
Can I value add to what Mr. Arindan said? Right?
Absolutely.
It's actually a very interesting question, because this is not today. I've been hearing this from the last 20 years. The open source versus the COTS. Right? I personally also like open source. It is not something that we have to discard. It's a good tool to start to do what kind of research that we want to do, what is that we want to build. That's where we start off. But then, as Mr. Gopalan said very correctly, when you want to get into a production, right, you want to make sure that large amount of data and things have to be done. That has to go through COTS, commercially off the shelf. COTS means. The reason is there is a good amount of development that happens in open source, but the credibility of testing, the making sure that the application is going to take that much amount of load and all is actually at a stake. That's where the commercially off the shelf products make sure that a good algorithm that has been developed either through in-house or from hiring some external parties. We understand the code and we then see that whether it is going to run within the environment of existing product. We don't want that this tool works, but it should not break something else. So the proper testing, the whole productization happens. That's where the this thing that's where is the major difference between COTS and the open source. But yes, I am not against open source also.
Thank you, Mr. Vinay Babu. I think with that, we can conclude today's knowledge session. My remark would be, there is a rising interest in geospatial ESG as a data approach. And very interestingly, it is also coinciding with the rapid developments that are shaping the geospatial ecosystem in India today. So, be it in terms of technological advancement, adoption, or conducive policy frameworks with the liberalization of the industry. So, yes, I think the conversation on geospatial ESG has to go forward. There has to be more awareness. And I hope, with this knowledge session, AGI has, probably kick-started and done a small part in beginning this conversation. Once again, I would like to thank all our panelists for this engaging and interactive session. I'm sure all of us have a lot to take back from this discourse. Um, Again, thank you everyone for your time. And yes, please stay tuned to AGI for more such topical knowledge sessions in the day to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Sakshi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.